Joining me now from our bureau in Washington, D.C., former White House correspondent for CBN News, Randall Phillips. Randall, you got to know George H.W. Bush many years ago, along with Barbara Bush. You see the images. You're there in Washington, D.C. You see what's happening in the rotunda and the people lined up. And you see the members of Congress, bipartisan salute to the 41st President of the United States. A fitting tribute?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just honored and humbled to be one of thousands of people that actually got to know him and call him friend. And he was a gentleman. You know, my aunt said a couple days ago he was a gentleman. But he was a gentleman and he was also a gentleman. And I think people recognize that and you know, look back fondly on just the type of human being he was, the kind of patriot he was, the hero that he was. It's special. I will say there are a lot of people who really ripped him to shreds during his presidency.
Oh, yeah.
Who are now full of praise for him, which is always it's always ironic. But in the case of this man, I'm glad he's getting those accolades.
I would say full of hypocrisy. A lot of it's coming from the mainstream media. But let's talk about the good. I look at him from a distance. Obviously, I never met George H.W. Bush, but I look at him as a humble person. Very humble person. A patriot. You just used that word. I think that I would use that to describe him. A family man. Is that what you saw?
Oh, absolutely. I got to know him from a very young age. I had been one of the lucky girls who was picked to be on Broadway in Annie, and so I got to know him as a child. And children can tell, you know, you can sort of sense about a person. And he was a lovely, lovely man. Treated me like family. The whole Bush family did when I came into contact with others in the family, but he and Mrs. Bush were just especially lovely to me. And I'll tell you a story I've never told anybody. Publicly. We were on a rally in, I think it was St. Louis, and I often came out before the president, he was then vice president, before the vice president spoke to his campaign, on his campaign rallies. And I would sometimes sing, and I would sometimes speak, and sometimes I'd do both, but it was always before he came out. And one day at this particular rally, he had this kind of contemplative look and eventually called me over. We were not on yet. We were just waiting in the holding room. And he said, you know, I just want to tell you that every time I hear your voice, your name called and announced over the huge speakers, I hear, instead of Randall Brooks, which was my name at the time, he said, I hear Robin Bush. And I like to think that she would have been as lovely as you are. And I mean, that just obviously brought tears to my eyes, and I still get teary when I think about it. And it says nothing about me. It really just shows that even in these moments in front of thousands and thousands of people, he was at heart a family man. And yeah. he mourned the loss of that daughter for decades, and it was always on his mind. So definitely a family man. Spine-tingling
story you just told there. And when he spoke of his time in World War II, he was very understated about it. But 58 missions, he was shot down, he was rescued. Obviously, these events shaped his life. And then he goes into public service with the CIA, eventually vice president. I'm skipping a little bit here, and then becomes president. His legacy as president of the United States, I'm sure everybody has a different vision of the legacy of George H.W. Bush, the 41st president. But I think some of these things that certainly shaped his presidency was Alan Greenspan and interest rates kind of harming him, a recession. He wasn't happy about that. He had a war, the Persian Gulf War, that some would say it was debatable, was justifiable or not. No new taxes. He had no regrets about reneging on no new taxes. Ross Perot, he did have regrets about Ross Perot. I don't think he ever forgave Ross Perot for running in 1992. And in the end, he lost to what I think most people consider a relatively weak Democrat. That would be Bill Clinton. And I would say he was probably shocked by that. Would you agree that he was shocked by the loss in 1992?
I do agree with that, and I think in some ways, you know, he was such an amazing leader in that he took on so many different roles. A lot of people are really good at one or two things, and you just ticked off a list of some of the things that he did and did fairly successfully. But I think his nature was not this type of political beast that we see that's just ruthless. And now that's not to say that there weren't people on his behalf who were ruthless, but But I think he was such a gentle guy and very, he had a wonderful upbringing, and that showed. And I think he was truly stunned at the kind of beating he took. And even when he was president, the kind of beating that he took from people in his own party. I think we can look back and see that there were some good things that he did. We can all sit here and say David Souter, but then there was Clarence Thomas. There were good things and there were bad things. But I think if he'd had a chance to have another term, I think we might have seen a different George Bush.
Clarence Thomas is a wonderful legacy of George H.W. Bush, and it should be noted that he wanted all presidents to attend his funeral service. No games in death.
Yes.
Just like in life, no games. Randall, thank you.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One American News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One American News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.